Will you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing unto you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Have any of you ever pondered the very serious question of what came first, the chicken or the egg? Have you? I mean, Bill's laughing at me. Have you ever thought about that? Josie apparently has. Yeah, and she's decided it's the egg, because then you couldn't have the chicken. But oh my goodness, who would lay that egg? Oh, now, right? Now we question our answer. Because if you really start thinking about it, your mind can come up with all sorts of reasons why either one is correct. It's this meditation on futility. It's a self-perpetuating cycle that can send any of us into a head-spinning chaos. But what about gratitude and joy? Which gives way to which? Does a life of gratitude lead to joy? Or does a joyful outlook make us more grateful? Yes. Gratitude and joy are so intertwined, they are perhaps indistinguishable, kind of like that chicken and egg problem. For the next 2 weeks, before Advent begins, I'm going to focus on thankfulness. We're in this liminal space right now, in both our liturgical and our secular calendars. Advent has yet to begin. Thanksgiving is almost here, but all we see in the stores are Santa Claus. Where do we fit? What are we supposed to do? Focus on Christmas? Buying gifts? Stress? Parties? Perhaps these 2 weeks can give us a pause. A pause from the busyness that will be here before we know it. A pause from the world that wants us to get caught up in consumerism. And so let's pause and give thanks. And explore and remember the gratitude and joy in our lives that is possible because of God's goodness and God's mercy. Psalm 100 is a good place to start. It is also an interesting psalm. It straddles categories and defies being put into a simple box, kind of like the chicken and the egg. There are 3 things about this psalm that make it interesting. First, it follows a series of enthronement psalms. These psalms proclaim the cosmic kingship of Yahweh, representing Yahweh's triumph over chaos. But it is not considered one of them. Second, it follows a familiar pattern of a praise psalm and tosses in a verse that stands apart from any other. Third, the superscription. That heading at the beginning of the psalm, it presents its own puzzle. This psalm is all over the place, which also might be a way to describe a life of joyful gratitude. It is all over the place. So let's start with that superscription. It simply says, a psalm of thanksgiving. All right, well, that seems straightforward. Why are we making this out to be more than it is? Well, thanksgiving could mean being thankful in a general sense, or it could mean making a sacrifice on the altar of worship. And I think both are useful for us in understanding the life of gratitude to which each one of us is called. First, there is that idea that thankfulness covers all of life. It is our way of approaching the world and the attitudes in which we choose to live. Second, there is a clear indication that we are making a commitment to God in our choice to live a grateful life. Because a sacrifice means that there is some cost, some effort on our part. We surrender when we sacrifice. We surrender our inclinations to think the world revolves around us. We bow down to service, looking to the needs of others before our own needs. We enter the gates with thanksgiving. What does that mean? Do we come to church with grateful hearts? Of course. At least I hope so. But more than that, we pass through every door with gratitude on our minds and in our hearts. We enter our own homes grateful for the family of which we are a part. We go into the world grateful for the abundance we take for granted way too often. We encounter others and give thanks for the gift of the life that they are, even the ones we might sometimes struggle to get along with. This lifestyle is our joyful praise. This lifestyle is our hymn of grateful praise. We use our presence to bring joy into the world around us. And it only takes a quick glance to see how countercultural this idea really is. Worship the Lord with gladness. Worship is not just on Sunday mornings. It means to lead a worship-centered life. Because of course, what we do in this hour that we gather together with the body in this sanctuary matters. And we ought to do it with as much joy and gratitude as we can muster. But to worship the Lord with gladness is what we do in our homes and places of work, in our neighborhoods, on our playgrounds. We live out the worship of God by giving thanks anywhere and everywhere we can and as noisily as possible. King, I'm looking at you. Psalm 100 also has many characteristics of a praise psalm. We hear those, lots of imperatives in a relatively short psalm. Worship, enter, give thanks, make a joyful noise. But there is one word that is sandwiched right there in the middle that looks different. Did you pick up on it? No. K-N-O-W. No. There are lots of things we can do and need to do, like worship and enter and give thanks and make that joyful noise. Yes. But we are also commanded by the psalmist to know. There is something driving all that doing. There is something behind this joyful gratitude. We know that the Lord is God. We know that God made us and that we are God's. We know that we are God's people and the sheep of God's pasture. This is the same knowing we bring as a congregation today as we witness the baptism of Birkin. We know that she is God's and that she is marked as Christ's own forever through baptism. For this we sing and shout our grateful praise. All of us have been gathered up. We all belong. We are all a part of something that is infinitely bigger than we can see. So of course, gratitude and joy are the only proper responses. Especially when the psalm concludes with a description of this God who has gathered us. The Lord is good. God's steadfast love endures forever, and God's faithfulness to all generations. Amen and amen and amen.